There will be some change visually, but not much, and plus they're reversible. That's one of the things that Mass Historical looks at a lot of times is, can what you're doing be reversed? And of course they can be taken off. So.
And so that will do all the windows?
It would be 21. There's
Oh.
3 windows that are blocked off.
Oh, okay.
And at one point, I thought, well, maybe we should put a storm on that anyway. But they are actually shuttered. And when the window person came, he said, adds character. And it would be crazy to do it anyway because it's blocked on the inside.
Oh.
It's a wall.
Oh, it is? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we'll have, and these are just the ones that are in the original building. They're not the ones that are on the addition. Those are regular regular windows that have been put in. They were new with the addition, so they were not the historic windows.
Oh, okay. Questions?
So the new addition can get the modern double pane,
They
thermally
got,
insulated
yeah.
windows, but the ones on the other part of the building, because of its, the original historic part, have to use the old single pane leaky windows.
Single pane historic windows that have been preserved.
I think way back in time, if they knew they could use this double pane thermal stuff and stop the drafts, they probably would have gone that way or shifted at some point in time, but I
Well,
understand the
there's a
restrictions
lot
that-
of question about that because there are a couple of things that the old windows, they're made with old wood, which is denser than new wood. Replacement windows generally have to be replaced within 20, 25 years. These old windows, if they're restored, they could go another 150 years.
So I agree that there's a need for these. It's a small amount of money for 21 windows. It's not, price is fine, and the use of the CPC funds, as we're doing here, is appropriate. I thought the original draft article was for $30,000, and there was some cost sharing. So what's changed from the original
Okay,
article to the one you're coming
what
forward?
happened is we were looking at a preservation grant and just speculating on what the cost would be. So I've gone to a training session for the grant, and I've gone to training sessions for Windows. The grant is a minimum of, it's a matching grant, so they would provide a minimum of $7,500, and we would provide the other $7,500. In addition, we would have to pay for an architect to do specs, and then we would have to pay for the architect to stay with the job. And that would get up to probably be the $30,000. And it just seemed, we're talking about installing storm windows. Even though I would look for someone who is knowledgeable about historic windows and buildings and that sort of thing to oversee the project and to probably get a contractor in. It just seemed like a lot of extra money for the sake of getting $7,500. And
Agreed.
we would be paying $7,500 plus the cost of the
So
architect.
it's not like you were coming up with a better or different
No.
solution. It's the same solution. It's just that we fund it all from CPC. We can get it done for 15 versus add these added
Yeah,
costs. for
if
the-
we
Okay.
do it without an architect. If it was something that, I spoke to Leon about it, if it's something that looked like we needed an architect, but we're just putting storm windows on, just doesn't seem like it
Where
requires
did the
enough
idea of having an architect come from? I'm just curious. You are just
the
replacing
grant.
windows.
From the grant.
Grant
Oh, the
requires
grant
it,
required
and they
it.
require us to pay for it.
Jeez.
So,
That does
I
seem
mean,
crazy for
I
storm
started
windows.
out with an estimate from the person, the architect for this project, and he gave me an estimate to have the specs done of $5,000. So,
Grants are great sources of funding versus taxation here, but the overhead burdens that the organizations put on that in terms of reporting and specs, they just add cost to these, so.
yeah.
So the 15,000 includes installation, everything?
I have a budget estimate. I have actually two, and one came in at around 15, just under 15. The other one came in at 27,000. So I don't
Same
know.
job.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know if he didn't want the job.
Okay. So that
But
includes
what I
it.
would have to do is have 3 bids. And, no, I hopefully I can find 3 bids. I have one.
So,
Oh.
so with that,
I have one budget bid. You know, she's done I've given her the dimensions. And 2 possible window manufacturers. And she said either manufacturer, it would be the same.
Oh, okay.
so I don't feel I should be giving money away, but with that, it would be nice if you can get the bid when the time comes to actually move forward, that's under the 15. But if it comes in at 15.5, 16, 17, something more than 15, then you're kind of stuck. And I don't know that we can use the reserve fund transfer process to get extra money for CPC-related expenditures. So I'm almost wondering why we wouldn't set the warrant article at, let's say, $20,000 to make sure you've got enough to get the job done and don't get stuck with only doing 18 out of 21 or needing a special town meeting. I know there's a risk that now the vendors know we got an extra pot of money to spend and they could run the numbers up, but it sounds like the number you're asking for is cutting close to whatever that low bid is, and if it's not as low, you're stuck and trying to move forward with a worthwhile project.
I don't know that we necessarily could not use a reserve fund transfer. I don't know. I mean, it's an unplanned expenditure.
I just
Yeah,
question.
you couldn't take it from, it would have to be from the reserve fund. You couldn't take it at that point from CPC, obviously, because we don't
Right,
have
right.
jurisdiction.
Okay, I
But-
just want to add, when that bid for both of those was for the 24 windows.
Oh.
So now we've got 3 less windows.
Oh, so it should cover it.
I'm hoping, but I do appreciate the idea of giving a little leeway on it.
Well, since we, because of the calendar, find ourselves more than likely having to vote before the CPC votes, I wonder if some wording can be developed that makes our recommendation, assuming we recommend that there be such an expenditure, contingent. 2 parts to it. The first is contingent upon the release of funds for this purpose by the CPC, and the other part would be a lowest and best bid not to exceed. And there's a cap, but it's lowest and best. And best has to do, of course, with references of similar work done, all that sort of thing.
So Larry, on your first part, I'm not clear on the process here. I don't know if CPC has to vote and say yes, or if it's, if their vote is just a recommendation for the use of the funds and the actual expenditure, like all others, is subject to town meeting vote. So, we could get, I can see a position where we would, based on what we see tonight, recommend let's assume we recommend to support the article as it's written, and CPC on Wednesday decides, no, they don't want to do that. So, that would be since our motion would be the main motion and the article would be recommended and move forward, the discussion would be in favor of the article. CPC would have an opportunity at town meeting to explain why they didn't think it was a worthwhile expenditure or why they chose not to support
Well,
it.
if ours
and
is,
decide accordingly.
if ours, again, assuming it is in favor as proposed, is contingent upon their, then it never reaches your concern, because ours is contingent on theirs, and if theirs doesn't come through, ours is nullified. And there's a automatic no action.
See, we're going, I've never seen that type of recommendation in on the finance committee.
Well, that's
side.
why I said at the outset, I wonder if such wording can be developed.
You
Or
know
we
what?
could wait until
Right.
later.
Well, I thought the whole point was they're going to vote, and we've got a printing press that has to turn.
I know.
So,
Well, yes, I mean, I was thinking we would wait until town meeting rather than having to vote just for that.
And we've had that
recommend that-
discussion on others, and the more senior members here keep saying that the moderator tells us we can't make up our mind, he doesn't care what we think on town meeting, so we should put something in there. One approach, let's assume there's a favorable vote from the finance committee. The CPC, for whatever reason, decides that, against this and doesn't support it. Another approach is we are gonna meet prior to town meeting anyway. We could always have a discussion then and say, well, their vote is now negative, here's why, and we can come up with an alternative suggestion or motion at the night of town meeting.
that would be a substitute motion.
Do
I
they,
suppose that could be done,
And we can
sure.
address it that way without putting some contingent language in a
Yeah, that does
report
seem
that
to
we're
muddy
putting
the
in.
waters, a contingent vote.
Yeah.
Do you have any
It-
indication from CPC, or you don't, or it
I-
hasn't been discussed at all?
I do, yeah. When we were talking about the grant at 15,000, they were for that.
And the Historical Commission has voted positively, I assume?
I'm sorry, what?
Has the Historical Commission voted positively?
Yes,
Okay. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that was covered.
Yep.
is it required that they vote, in order to release money from these different accounts, do they have to vote in favor of it before we do, or?
I did ask Barbara that today. She thought that we could vote tonight, but I would be hesitant to say that we could vote at town meeting if they hadn't voted in favor, because I think that's their purview to vote those funds, and then it's subject to town meeting vote.
I mean, it's an academic question. It sounds like they're going to support it, but they just haven't voted on it yet.
no, they were not able to vote on it at the
Right.
last meeting because it wasn't on the agenda.
Right.
So
And-
they couldn't take a formal vote.
So that goes back to the process question. If this were an expenditure for, I don't know, windows in the town hall, some other article that wasn't related to CPC, it's just part of the overall general government, you can have the selectmen, be opposed to it. You can
Right.
have the planning board on an article opposed to it.
Exactly.
You have the finance committee say, but we recommend the article and the expenditure. You go to town meeting votes yay. The money's approved, the expenditure can move forward. So this question about what role does the CPC have, it goes back, we should understand it. I don't know that it would affect any vote we have tonight, but, if the town meeting voted yes and the CPC committee voted no, does that mean it doesn't move forward? Or, is there still the funding and availability, use of funds?
Do they manage this account, Kathy? Is that why we have to wait for them to vote?
Say that again?
So this Community Preservation Fund,
Mass General Law.
I'm looking it up.
do you know that, Barbara? Do they manage this particular fund? Because I would guess, just by way of how it's organized, that to Mike's question, if we were to pass it and CPC said, no, you can't have the money, you're still allowed the money, but unfortunately, it wouldn't be able to come out of that fund, I'm guessing, because they said no.
I'm not
So
sure.
it would be
yeah,
negated.
I'm not sure what you mean by manage. I mean, they,
Well, are they the ones who hold the purse strings in that particular fund.
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay, so that's where their vote comes
They
into
make
play.
decisions on,
And if they do hold those and we vote yes, and town meeting votes yes, and they have control of the purse strings, then they're, in that case, they wouldn't move forward with the project. There's probably a couple examples. I know one was a few years back on a particular position where FinCom recommended, extra hours in a position, and town meeting supported that, but people who, on a day-to-day administration, didn't increase the hours and so forth. So it's not like it's a binding, you have to do it, it's just an authorization to expend funds up to the limit that's authorized. It's not necessarily a mandatory, you must spend it.
Actually, I'm really glad you said what you just said, because it clarifies things. The moderator always tells the townspeople that the recommendation from the Finance Committee is, in every instance, the motion on the floor. He then asks for the townspeople to vote that there's no necessity for a second in each instance, and points out, the moderator does, that the motion of the Finance Committee is subject to a substitute motion or an amendment. Okay. So if we don't do what I had suggested, we just walk away from the contingency idea, vote as we judge the facts tonight, tell us to vote. CPC does whatever it does, but ours is the motion, and we're set. Somebody is free to amend it, or, but that's what a meeting is for.
So while it's worthwhile to understand the process and the actual role of CPC in releasing and managing these funds, we're spending a lot of discussion on a small dollar amount for, I'm not hearing any objections, for a very worthwhile, in my mind, investment for the building over there. So I would make a recommendation.
I have the law here now.
Okay.
It does say the CPC shall make recommendations to the legislative body, which would be the town meeting, for, in this case, acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources. That would be the applicable one. So it does say shall make the recommendation.
So it's a recommendation versus you're investing in the actual implementation and control. If they recommend no, but town meeting votes yes, you have the basis for granting us some funds. They made a recommendation, no, we don't think we should spend the money, but town meeting, on hearing other other sides of the story, decided they wanted to spend their money that they set aside for that expenditure, and then it's up to whoever would implement this project. They now have a funding authorization.
Oh, actually, it goes on to say, after receiving recommendations from the CPC, the legislative body shall take such action and approve such appropriation from the Community Preservation Fund and such additional fund appropriation as it deems appropriate. So it sounds like the town meeting could actually,
Town meeting. So with
Go a
that,
little
I
bit
would
beyond.
make a motion that we, I'll give Mr. Waddick a moment to catch up on the topic if he would like to vote.
we're on Article
Article 5.
My motion would be that we recommend Article 5 as written. Recommend the town meeting approve Article 5 as written.
So I have some questions.
Bruce seconded it?
Yes. When do you anticipate this being done? Because I'm just, it doesn't seem like, so you, let me backtrack. So, and so you understand what I'm getting at. There seems to be a need to have this in this annual town meeting, but you only have 2 bids? So you really don't know what the full cost is gonna be? That's question 1.
I have 2 budget bids,
2 budget bids.
right.
But we're voting for $15,000, just before any modifications to the motion. It may or may not come in at $15,000 is what I'm hearing. You may or may not
That's-
find someone to
that's
do it for
possible.
$15,000 is what I'm hearing, correct?
Well, we've got one that is slightly less than 15,000 for 24 windows, but we're taking it back to 21 windows.
Okay, so it sounds like you might have someone,
Yes.
right? Okay, so that kind of clarifies that, because I was wondering if you had someone who could do it for the 15,000, because discussions were, what if it comes in higher, lower, whatever.
Right.
And then I was wondering when it was going to be done, because if, you know, if all of this really needs to go to CPC, which it sounds like it doesn't, because our, whatever the committee votes would carry it through, would there be a reason to maybe hold it off until the next special town meeting, is my point, so that you have everything, all your ducks in a row, and all the votes, and I don't know why CPC didn't get together and vote this sooner when they know that we have a deadline for the book.
Well, part of that was, we were dealing with the idea of the grant,
Correct. yeah.
and then when we got away from that, it wasn't on the agenda, and that was probably my fault. And then this week's meeting was canceled because there was no quorum. So it was just,
Okay.
unfortunate.
It was unfortunate events, got it.
Well, for future reference, there's standard language that's the footer of all the agendas. It's been in place for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And it basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says that the agenda is the chair's best information for what will happen, but it is subject to change. Well, you walk in the room, and you could stand on that language, and they could have, so it's for future reference, obviously,
Sure.
now, but they could have taken it up.
yep.
They
Okay.
have actually gotten a bit stricter on that, though, I must say.
I thought so too, yeah.
Well, go ahead and do it,
more
and let them
recent-
sue you.
The more recent open meeting law
And by the time
guidelines
it
are a
gets
little
to court,
stricter.
the thing will be built, so
Yeah.
the hell with it.
The hope was to get this done before winter.
Okay, so it's before winter, so then,
Yeah.
waiting for a potential January special town meeting
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't really,
wouldn't really, yeah.
Plus, it would be nice if they were in, so that they could, use the screens.
So that it gets chilly.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But I hate to make these quick, rash, votes for town meeting. It's it's certainly not your fault, right?
So would I be stretching a little bit if, let's assume this passes at town meeting, call it roughly June 1. The expenditure is really available as of July 1 if it passes. You've been talking about this for a while. Is your plan, if you get a positive vote at June meeting, to just keep moving forward with this so that, once July comes, you've got your bids in hand, you can get moving quickly as opposed to, okay, now we got the vote and we'll pick it up next March or April?
My inclination would be to just keep going with it. And, do whatever you need to do. I would do whatever you need to do to get the bid out.
And we have that issue with all of them. How many times have we voted on something and we're a year later looking at it and they still haven't made the expenditure for something that was a passionate need to have, and I got to get moving on it in July, and 9 months later, it's still in the to-do pile. So.
Do you know, Barbara, if it is true, as has been said, that the Historical Commission prevented the center office building committee from doing what you're now proposing to do? Because it would interfere with the historical facade.
I don't know. I wasn't involved with the commission back then when the buildings were done.
Well, the building committee chair told me directly that that's exactly what happened. So there's a small irony now that the
Okay.
historical commission is willing to do it,
Well,
retrofitting it.
these things change also. The Mass Historical can change their approval, of what they approve of.
Yeah, you're right about that. In this instance, it was local option.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions
Yeah, I don't know.
or comments?
No, I mean, if we're comfortable with this amount, and interesting, you know, thanks for clarifying the $30,000 or the $15,000 difference. I don't know if there's reason to have any kind of a, you know, substitute motion. I mean, are we comfortable? I know there's already a motion on the table to accept as written,
Right.
so.
I mean, I think
Do you
it seems
feel
like
there's a
Barbara is
need?
comfortable with the 15,000.
But do you
Yeah,
feel there's a need to change it to some other kind of wording?
It would be nice to have a buffer, but, you know, the fact is that it came in just under 15 for 24 windows.
Yeah, so it would seem like you do have a buffer because you're only doing,
I think that's a very prudent decision, actually.
yes. Yeah. So,
So if discussion is, you know, should we give her a little bit more buffer and make, instead of approving at 15, at 20, I mean, I can, I'm happy to amend the motion to another number that people are comfortable with.
I'm not
going there?
suggesting to
Okay.
change the cost at all, personally. I think 15,000, it sounds like Barbara has all the information she needs, and she's comfortable with it.
Okay.
ready for a vote?
Well, like I said, if there was a buffer, I don't know if it should be $5,000, but maybe a couple. Just,
I mean,
you
keep,
know, I've got
sorry.
I've got the estimate, and she hasn't, no one has come out to measure the windows, but when I gave them the numbers, I said 40 by 80, which was a little bit bigger than what they probably are. And when I did have one of the manufacturer reps come, and he looked at it and measured, and he said, yeah, you know,
So,
they'll get the exact numbers, but 40 by 80 was a
so
good number.
here's another question, and I don't know which you made me think of. So it's $15,000, and of course, this is coming out of the historic fund. This is not coming from, you know, free cash or anything like that. So, does the CPC have the right to fund any additional periodic costs? Or does that still have to go before,
Yes, yes.
okay?
So the question for that is, if she comes back and says it's 16, not 15, I don't know if a reserve fund transfer is allowed for CPC funds.
Well, you couldn't take it from CPC. You could probably take it from the regular reserve fund.
Right.
I also don't think that it's necessarily an unforeseen cost, though, which I don't think is a prudent use of the free cash
Yeah.
or the reserve fund transfer,
The
in my
reserve-
opinion.
We can move forward at the 15. Hope you get it done. It'd be nice to give you a buffer. If you come up short, I would think, you know, worst cases, you need a special town meeting, and we typically have one in the fall or anyway for something else. So, you know, we can tackle it at what a special town meeting that most likely we will have. So,
Okay?
Motion can be amended from the floor, right?
Yes, it could be.
yeah.
Yes. We ready for a vote then?
Yes.
All in favor? 8-0. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
So you'll report to CPC that we voted positively?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. That's good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we get them in there before fall.
Did you take my budget book home by chance from last meeting? Because I left it here, or you took it? If you took it, great.
And before we take up rec again, we do have that figure for,
No, that's okay. I
Fine.
thought that I left it here and Board of Selectmen was gonna like rip it or something.
on the special town meeting warrant, we do have that number for the snow and ice deficit. I can find it now. Oh, here it is.
So,
We're going to Article 1 of,
okay, before you do that, Kathy,
yes,
so on the Article 5
yes.
that we changed, didn't we change it to historic fund? Fund is in there twice. Should it be there?
lost my space.
So it says Community Preservation Fund Historic Fund balance.
So
That's
is it a
how-
historic fund within the community
Yes.
preservation?
Yeah, no, it
fund?
should be in there
Okay.
twice.
He's right.
Okay,
Good catch, but that's right.
got it.
Oh, here it is, I found it. So Article 63 of the special town meeting warrant is now fixed at $145,597. So the motion would be to
Approve that amount.
vote to transfer, well, you have it in the motion, because we already put it in the book.
What is,
That is the final figure.
why isn't it, I must have the wrong one open. Hold on. No, we did it the other night.
We did do it.
All right, so I know I always stir it up when I ask this. So you're talking Article 64.
No, 63.
Okay, 63. So the article as approved by the selectmen who are responsible for the warrant says transfer a sum of money. Are we, in our report, going to change the wording of that article to put in a
No.
number? Or are
No, we
gonna
would
put
have
in a-
our own motion.
Our motion would say that the town, the Finance Committee recommends that the town, and you would rewrite the motion with the word.
I'll read it for you, okay? So.
We already rewrote it.
So recommendation of the Finance Committee that the town vote to amend the article as follows: to see if the town will vote to transfer $145,597 from free cash to the snow and ice account number 11432, or take any action relative thereto.
That's the way it should be written, because they wrote the article, and that is how it's posted, or will be posted.
I agree 100%.
Occasionally, we figure it out.
And maybe move this along,
Is there a motion?
I would make a recommendation that
Falls in
we
my
recommend
area.
the
So I'll make a motion that we recommend the town meeting the article.
As Joni read.
As Joni just
As Joni
read, as
read.
amended, according to.
Did you get that, Joanne?
I have recommend as amended. Is that okay if I do it like
Yes.
that without all of what Joni just said? Or do I
No, yeah, you will need that.
Probably need it, so
no words?
yeah.
Okay.
you can copy and paste directly from this, we'll send it to you. Okay.
Okay, was there a second?
yes.
That was you. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's 8, are you raising your hand, Mr. Hare? 8-0, thank you.
It was 145,000 what?
597.
597.
And we hope that it does not snow again.
We're pretty thorough, because no one wanted to round it up to 600 just to make sure we had enough money in the account.
No, no. Okay, next thing, next item is that we do now have 8 members, which is still an even number, unfortunately. And so I thought that, to be fair, that we should, if someone wants to make a motion, to reconsider Article 14, the town barn fields. If you want to come up, would anyone like to make that motion? Or if not, I will make the motion. Mr. Waddick?
I'll make the motion that we reconsider
Article 14.
Article, our vote on Article 14.
Is there a second? Discussion on reconsideration.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Larry? Oh, no, this is just, the discussion is just whether or not to reconsider.
Reconsider.
Then we get into the article. This is only, the motion right now is only to reconsider. You have any comments on that, Mike? All in favor of reconsidering? Okay, 8-0. All right. Now, is there wait a minute. If we're going to make the motion, we have to make the particular motion that was given to us.
And I guess for the 2 members that were missing,
Right.
there were 6 of us here Tuesday night that heard the presentation.
Sure.
There was a
Yeah,
motion
motion.
to recommend the article.
Is this it?
3 of us, myself, Mike,
Oh.
and Larry, voted
Why-
in favor of it.
Actual motion.
Joni, Jim, and
I sent it
Kathy
out.
voted against the article. So it was 3-3 against the motion. So we ended up with a recommendation from the Finance Committee to take no
Here
action.
it is,
Now there are 2 additional members that
the motion.
have an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, what Mike says is exactly right, and it means that at this very moment, we are 1 second before the motion was made that wound up with a 3-3 vote. Nothing, from a parliamentary standpoint, at this moment, nothing's happened on this subject. It's
We're back to
wide
ground
open.
zero.
We're
Yeah,
back
we're
to
back to
ground
that.
zero.
Yeah.
If we hadn't reconsidered just now,
Then-
this would be over.
That's right.
But
There
here's,
is an actual motion.
you're going to
Whoever's
propose the
make
motion, there it is.
That second part there, I don't know if you want to make the motion, Larry, since you did the other day?
Trying to remember what the hell I said.
Yeah, I know, I don't think we read that
read
the
it.
other day.
We didn't read it, we just
But we,
made the motion.
that
as
is
written.
the motion written by bond council,
You know,
town council.
incidentally, got to spell out the,
It's not
Yeah.
the top part, it's the second part.
well, yeah, there
That's,
are
I know, it has to be spelled out.
actually 1, 2,
Yeah.
3 places.
Oh, we know that. I think
Okay.
we've already done that.
I move the Finance Committee recommend to the annual town meeting that the town appropriate $6,700,000 for the so-called Town Barn Field project.
I'll second.
No, you have to read that whole thing,
Oh, I
It's
do?
different from the article.
that bottom half.
All right. All right. I move as follows, that the town appropriates, let me start over, geez. I move that the Finance Committee recommend as follows, recommend to the annual town meeting as follows, that the town appropriate $6,700,000 to pay costs of designing, reconstructing, and equipping Town Barn Field, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow $5,700,000 of said amount under and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44-7, Parent 1, Parent, or any other enabling authority, and $1 million of said amount under and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town in connection therewith, and further, that any premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44-20, thereby reducing by a like amount the amount authorized to borrow to pay such costs or take any other action relative thereto.
Thank you, Larry.
I hope you're happy.
All right,
Is there a second?
I'll second
We have to be precise.
Does this go to Joanne?
Joanne, you want that? So it's the, so it's this part, the second part is the motion, yes.
I had a question. The other night, we discussed the fact that you were going to go to the committee to get another $500,000. So how does that play into this if we don't know if that's been approved yet? I just was curious. Does the motion cover that? Would that be one of that unforeseen
Say we-
source of
we
additional
either-
funds?
The way Larry read it is we're voting 5.7
Right.
by debt, and then the other million, it would be debt, but through CPC. If we think it should be, 500,000 plus or minus, we should alter the article here, or we can go forward with that's the one that's there, and if CPC decides to support that, we can always, at our meeting prior to town meeting, come up with a
Adjust it
substitute
then.
motion that reflects
Yes,
that.
or we
Know if there
Bring
was
that
enough
forward
wiggle
then.
room in that to allow that to happen?
You know,
Is there enough wiggle room in that motion?
No.
I don't like to,
it. You can always go lower.
Or
You
take
can always
any other
be-
action.
It can be a substitute motion to go lower.
right.
Any other action? Not-
Can we cover it in an article
Unmodified.
motion? I'm not sure, I'd have to read it again.
So that it could, instead of 5, 7, and 6, it could be
No, I hate to
5, 7, and 1, it could be 5, 2,
mess
and
with something that's
1.5.
been written by
Mount
bond
Same
council.
total.
Yeah, I don't think we should, I agree.
I mean, we could either hold off, which I don't really want to do, or like Mike said, if the amount is changed,
I'm
vote
okay
right
spending
before.
$15,000 of their money out of a fund that's got a lot in here. I'd rather go with, hear what CPC says when we're
Right.
talking plus or minus $500,000 out of
Yeah, it's a
their
lot of money.
funds.
So, yeah. But is there anything you all want, and thank you for coming back again, that you would like to add at this point? I didn't watch the selectmen's meeting.
Introductions and-
Oh, yes, could you introduce yourself?
And use the microphone, please, for people at home.
I'm Erin Carson. I'm a member of the Recreation Committee.
I'm Annie Rossioli, the Recreation Director.
Thank you.
Now, I understand that when you met with the selectmen, that they asked you, and I didn't see this, so I'm just getting this secondhand, if you could reduce the amount, the total amount, and cap the amount of the ledge, as well as going to the CPC.
Yes.
Is that something that you're going to entertain or look at?
The committee hasn't had a meeting yet. We won't be meeting until Tuesday. So that's not something we can really answer prior to. It's something to explore. I think capping the ledge sounds like a good idea, but it's rather risky. What if the ledge came in at 1.6 and we had capped it at 1.5? Even though it's not likely to do that. But at this time, the committee hasn't been able to discuss it at a public meeting.
Okay.
I don't see how they could do that without giving us some expenditures to start the project and actually do some field work to get a better feel for what they have for conditions out there. To arbitrarily cap a number for ledge or something, ledge costs or whatever, is I think tying their hands.
I agree.
This is what came from the selectmen, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was a suggestion.
Yeah.
So just the 6.7 million, I'm just hearing from Mike, what has been done to justify that figure? What research has been done? Any site work been done? How'd you come up with that?
The original plan dates back to 2010. We've spent about $120,000 on work for this project so far. So we've been working with the same engineer group.
And this is
Waterfield.
their recommendation? This is what they estimate it's going to cost?
Yes, correct. At the last meeting, we had looked into that ledge figure a lot. I'm not sure if you were able to watch the informational night or the Board of Selectmen. So the ledge number is so high for a protective blanket. Waterfield suggests that it most likely will come out closer to 800,000, but in the off chance of an off season, we could see an increase. So they are very persistent in stating that we will not see a number that high. But again, if we're going, the last thing we want to do is have to come back and ask for more money.
They did have a breakdown. I don't know if do you have any copies of that breakdown?
Yeah.
That maybe you could share?
I have plenty.
And Mike, to your point, that night, Charlie Blanchard brought up the question of digging more test pits to see what the dispersion of the ledge was. So it was discussed that night. But it
True,
just didn't
that
come
would
to
give them a
us.
little better feel for it, but they're gonna have to spend some money to get there, and, you know.
Were you forwarded today's email from Craig on his statement of the additional testing? I do have a copy of that if you'd like to see it.
I saw it, but I'm not sure that I forwarded it because I was just busy today.
I think he may have mentioned that it would probably take anywhere from 3 to 5 days to do a sufficient job of testing around, which doesn't sound like that'd be extraordinary amount of money, but
Yeah, so he had, I'll pass you the email to overview because I asked for clarification. Waterfield made a statement saying that they needed more ledge, and that's how it was perceived by myself, the audience, and the committee. Just give me 1 second. Would everyone like a breakdown of the cost or just? Okay, well, we'll start with this.
Would anyone like a copy of the photo of the project?
Yes, please.
Well, I have a bunch of packets, so let's just start with that. The second page has the breakdown, third page has the
Somewhere else. too. I
Yeah.
have no idea where it is. Thank you. I know I have it somewhere.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Not a problem. And here you are. Yep.
So in case some of you don't know, the,
Craig's email today,
Okay.
and I do have a copy for everyone. I'm not sure if you'd rather read it or.
Yeah, I'm afraid I didn't send it out to everyone. It was
Okay.
just too crazy today. I have it, but you want to give it to everyone else.
This was an update on Craig's statement on ledge.
Okay.
And Craig is the design
He is the
person,
head of the
engineer?
design, yes.
Yeah.
There you are.
And just to put these fields in perspective, there's another Little League field, and then that's already there, existing.
Yeah, so this picture is only of the added
Right.
amenities. We have a softball, multi-purpose, and Little League field currently existing.
Which would stay there,
Yes.
which would,
Yes, those would stay there, and they'd be open for use during construction.
Annie, are all fields of regulation size for tournament purposes?
For the Little League will be added in. That one will be regulation. What we currently have is regulation. Softball's regulation. Our added multi-purpose field is, the current field that we have is for the younger age group, but it is of regulation size under U12.
For soccer.
Yes, for soccer.
What about
Thank you.
addressing parking and travel back and forth on that road? Is there any plans to widen the road, to put in more parking?
So this is 100 parking spots, and they include handicap accessible. And the road will be redesigned to accommodate that.
So the field, the size of the field is adequate for regulation, for instance, soccer play, up to what age?
The larger field goes all the way.
Yeah, it's a 11 by 11 they call it, which I believe is.
So that's all the way up to adult for
Yes,
soccer?
yeah,
And for lacrosse as well?
for lacrosse as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think the road is actually being reconfigured to it, or the
Yes.
location is being changed?
Yep. I do have the larger poster in my car, if anyone would like me to grab that. This is a visual you could pass around that reflects both what is there and what is added.
That's a misnomer.
So just so I understand correctly, you're asking that the town approve that you borrow $5.7 million?
Correct.
Okay, and then that would have to go through an override?
It would be a debt exclusion vote at the ballot.
That'd be a separate vote.
That's a separate vote. And the 1 million would be borrowed under CPA, but that would not be subject to a separate vote.
CPC funds of $500,000, would that reduce the 5.7?
Yes,
So that's up in the air whether they're.
right.
Our other committee member was at the committee forum, so it got moved to next week.
They know it's
We're asking
repeats.
for 1,000.
And do you know any idea of the likelihood to get that?
Well, it was strongly suggested to us at the selectmen meeting that we go and ask for that money.
And it was confirmed that they do have the funds, but it'll be up to the committee to decide if they'd like to use it for the recreation fields.
And what kind of impact on taxes would this be for an override?
So we based on round figures, it, for a home valued at 300,000, Karen, it would be an increase of $126 a year to their tax.
For 20 years?
Yes.
For 20 years.
And they have it,
I thought it was 100.
they
Yeah,
they
the
have it
number
as
that-
an average home value of 279, 755. For
Which
the,
is 118.
right, 118. We rounded it up a little.
We
for the book.
rounded
thought
it,
was
because
easier.
nobody's going to be able to figure that out, right? The
No, but
average
we do
house-
have a common question of what the average household
That
is.
is the average household, but
It is, but we rounded it to 300.
And then that does decline
that's
annually.
only $8. Yeah.
So-
That's what?
It does decline annually,
Oh, because as the principal's paid off.
yes.
Oh, so that's the highest it will be.
That's the highest it'll be.
Oh, okay.
You're still talking a 20-year,
The town typically
Increase.
takes their loans, instead of being a uniform payment across, they pay a uniform principal over 20 years, so each year the interest amount declines.
Right, That's right.
Cost of the interest piece.
that's right, they do.
Actually, by rounding to 300,000,
I see.
a
Don't you
favor,
wanna see
I
that?
think it was unintentional. I wasn't participating in that rounding decision, but I think a favor was done to your cause. When you have a really odd number, even if it's labeled as average at, say, 279, a suspicious turn of mind would be that you calculated backwards, and you took a peculiar number in order to derive an attractive number. But when it's nice and fat and round, it looks a lot more innocent.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that
Right.
amount came from the assessor's office.
Correct.
But it is, when we were talking about it last night, we thought, oh, that's such a weird number. That's what we thought. It's only 20,000 rounded up, and the amount's less than $10 more.
So I don't want to be persistent on one issue, but we talked the other night about having a turf field for the multipurpose field.
Yeah.
So, and I have to ask this through the chair to see if the motion covers this or anyone else can mention that. But if, for instance, if we do this project and the ledge removal comes out at $1 million instead of $1.8 million, and we have $800,000 extra money, and I think it was estimated that instead of grass, if it were turf, the cost would be an additional $800,000. Does this motion allow that to happen, that found money, so to speak, that we didn't spend on ledge, to be spent on one of the other things that's incidental to the, because it said on anything else, it said we could spend, would that cover that type of?
I would think it would, because we aren't specifying that it's
Yeah.
$1 million for ledge and
Well, would you be-
$500,000 for the road, and.
Would you
I mean,
be
these are
open
the
to that?
estimates.
I most certainly would be.
Because
This is
it
something
doubles the
that-
amount of time you can use
Yeah.
the field.
I think it might.
I don't want to speak on the committee's behalf before we have our meeting on Tuesday, but throughout our discussion, turf, we've gone back and forth with. That wasn't heavily discussed since I've been into place, but I know that it's only not an option right now because of financial matters. I think
And
the
I would never
committee
put it
be
on baseball
thrilled.
fields. I would never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Softball
think that's a great
fields.
idea for the multipurpose field, and I'm sure the committee would be in
It
support.
would, you could use it year-round.
Yep.
Yeah, and a budget is a plan, not a straitjacket. And as long as you're not exceeding a certain approved or authorized figure, and you're acting reasonably in pursuit of a successful project, success being defined by the motion, well, you know, you got to have managers who manage.
Yeah.
And everybody else stands aside and lets them do what they're supposed to do. Sure.
I have two questions. Just procedurally, if this does go forward on our recommendation, it could still fall apart if they don't approve the override.
Right.
And the second thing is, is there any income generated from this project? I mean, do you have tournaments and you charge other towns to come? And what happens with that income? Where does that go? Does it help pay this at all, or is that just completely?
So this is something that we discussed pretty heavily the other night, and there's absolutely a potential for net revenue, but something that I feel needs to be kind of widely communicated is right now we don't have the fields that we need to support the leagues that we currently have in town. So the committee, we need a starting point. So we just, first and foremost, take care of the town leagues, get them somewhere adequate to be playing, somewhere that they're proud to be playing. From there, we could easily host tournaments. Auburn generated $100,000 in their first year. That was on turf fields, but not all of their fields are turf. Loosely speaking, Burgess and Tantascwa, they charge around $500 per, I don't know if it's per field or per day. So the fees are there. Little League would be able to have their own tournaments, but then the rec department would be able to schedule tournaments on open weekends. I'd have to clarify either with the committee or with Barbara Berry on how exactly the profits made off of that, how that would kind of work off. If it would be to support the leagues, if it would go directly towards the project or not. But first and foremost is the need for the fields for the town members themselves.
And I know you go ahead, I'm sorry.
There would also be an opportunity with having lit fields that we don't currently have. And if you're talking about turf fields, that means we're increasing our use. That we could offer as a rec department more options to our own community that could possibly generate a revenue stream for our department that we don't currently have. Such as more adult programs, summer evening programs that we don't currently have.
Do we have right now any adult, I know you have the basketball and the volleyball in the winter, but do you have any soccer for adults, or?
No.
Because I do know people who play
There is soccer for adults available. I don't.
But I think it's not.
Not through Sturbridge, not through the rec department. Right now on our one soccer field, we have soccer, lacrosse, and flag football.
What fields are lighted right now, and which fields in this complex will be lighted if it
So the
passes?
2 additional fields that are being added in the specific project will be lit. In the past year, Little League funded the lighting on their current field themselves.
So they play under the lights?
Yes, it's
The
new.
new field and the multipurpose field will have lights?
Yes, the new multipurpose field will.
In the basketball court,
Basketball courts and parking have lighting as well.
Bocce courts?
bocce?
The bocce courts are not lit.
Okay. Just curious.
People have to
Lighting
be
is right, the
home in
parking
bed
lot
anyway.
is lit, so.
It might, yeah. So that's something I can confirm because the
What?
bocce is bordering parking, so that parking light itself might be more than adequate.
Doesn't need a lot of light, there's not a lot of
It's-
collisions in
yeah.
bocce.
And we can always throw one in there down the road.
Now, obviously, you've spent years.
Park a car at one end.
What are your thoughts on, is this going to satisfy this problem that we've been trying to address of meeting the needs of our community for these fields? This isn't, in 5 years, we're going to say, oh, we need more, or, what's the analysis there?
It's going to satisfy to an extent. This is going to be kind of a region, would you say level them out? It's going to be a major starting point, and it's going to satisfy to an extent. Ideally, I'd like to see more, but at this time, we've worked with all of the leagues, and they've approved this project for their needs.
Bruce, did you have some questions?
Yeah, just one. Are you paying now to rent space for our in-town teams?
We don't pay, however, like youth basketball, they do pay to rent when they're using the high school on weekends for their winter sports. But the rec department, we take care of the fields in terms of lawn maintenance. DPW mows them. Little League has a different lawn care service on their fields. But these fields are currently operated through rec department.
So are you currently meeting the needs of all the in-town teams?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Some of
So
our
what do you
teams
do?
are playing in other neighboring towns like Wales, Holland, Brimfield.
Yeah. We have a committee member not present here because his pickup is in Holland tonight. We have our youngest age group of soccer playing on the town common 2 nights a week. In the fall, we have cheerleading on the town common.
Flag football also is played on the common.
Brookfield had reached out to us this year, desperate for a location. One of their fields were closed. It broke my heart to say no. I tried to work with them the best that we could, but we have people on the common, and I think that alone is enough of an answer.
I mean, I can tell you that when my almost 30-year-old child was 10, she was playing soccer in Brimfield because there weren't enough fields in Sturbridge.
Yeah, mine too.
And the
Yeah.
My oldest is
playing,
over 30, and we used to go to Wales.
Yeah.
playing on the common has consequences. The town, the tree warden pointed out that the parked cars, the weight of them has compressed the soil and as a result killed trees because the roots just couldn't stand up to it. So things get connected to things. This has actually a larger solution than recreation, important as that is all by itself.
Absolutely. And another plus side to having this project, especially a region with lit fields, is the concerts on the common, I think should always stay on the common. It's a great location, beautiful bandstand. But any other events that we like to have, something I've been exploring, I haven't brought to the committee yet, is the family movie night. So options like that, these fields are awesome for. And there's 100 more programs similar to a family movie night, but it just takes away, my main concern right now is the common and the heavy usage that we have there. So just another item to consider is just the general community events that we can have at a new location.
And that was one of the things that came at the open space meeting that Gene hosted, and you were there, of one of the thoughts that came through from that is we use the common a lot, and sometimes it's overcrowded given the size we have, that the town could use in terms of open space, a larger area for larger events, and maybe the multi-purpose field could do that. The diagram you passed around tonight that shows the location of these fields relative to the existing fields, has those fields closer to the highway department barns and area than the existing fields. Given that there's a study going on about the needs for the highway department, maybe a new barn and new facilities down there, have you guys had discussions, share those plans with them, and make sure that there's adequate space for their growing needs, that you're not, moving into space that they otherwise might need in the future, and we have some conflicts there?
In 2016, Lynn, the previous rec director, worked really closely with the highway department on this. Since I have been in the department, we haven't gone, they're aware that we're discussing it again, but they haven't come forward with any issues or complaints. But I know that it was heavy discussion 2 years ago. So they did work closely together on that.
Any other questions or discussion?
Before, I just had one more thing I wanted to add. I didn't get a chance to talk about this the other evening. There is a park grant that is available through the the state. And after reviewing the 30-page document about the grant, I really feel like our project is right in line with it. You can get a relief up to $400,000. It's a reimbursement grant, something that we would not include in the cost of, but still something that we could consider applying for. And I have a copy here if anyone would like to take a look at that as well.
What is the timeline for the project if it were to be approved?
1 to 2 years.
I mean, is it ready to go off the
ready to
ground,
go?
or
Yeah.
whatever
It would
it's
be
called?
ready to go off the ground. Waterfield does suggest waiting to go to bid until January.
Oh, yeah, he said that, yeah.
And we can explore that further if that's a loose suggestion or something that we should heavily consider. Again, I would also have to make sure that that worked with Greg. But relatively speaking, ready to go off the ground. The ballot wouldn't be until 90 days after the town meeting, so we'd already be in September.
Would that be able to be with the state primary, or is that not allowed? Because there's a primary in September.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the answer to that.
In Karen, a natural turf field, you lose a year because you've got to wait for the grass to grow. Whereas with the turf, you use it the next day. Unless, well, would they, I didn't look at the estimate. Is it a planted field or is it sod? If they were going to use grass, would they sod the field? Because then it doesn't take that long.
That would be a great
It's a
question for
few
Katie.
months rather than a year. But it doesn't break it down. I don't see anything.
Just, yeah, it doesn't say anything.
That's a big difference.
Landscaping.
Let me ask another question on that contingency, which is higher than normal. It's usually 10%. Why did they choose such a large amount?
Again, that's something I would assume Waterfield is going on the higher end to give us the protective coating, especially on a project of this scale. But I would be happy to reach out to Waterfield in the morning and provide you with a response on the multipurpose
It
field.
just seems like between the pledge and that contingency, you could be talking,
A significantly lower price.
yeah.
Like $1.5 million.
Where's the, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
15%. It is kind of high, isn't it, actually?
Contingency.
Between the contingency and the
Boy.
potential of the ledge, which is, it's
15%
a,
contingency is,
it's a broad,
It's usually 10%.
it's
it's
usually
at
10.
15, but they said 15, didn't they?
It is, it's in here.
It is 15, but what I'm saying, it's usually 10%.
And I would say for an underground project, I would typically see 15 to
Oh, would you?
20% at this stage of design on projects. Once you get more detailed engineering behind you and a better understanding as to what you have for soil conditions or ledge and other subsurface conditions, you would bring that down. But at this stage of design, I think 15% is typical.
normal?
If not a little bit on the lower side rather than the high side.
But any extra money is potentially going to be used to do more rather than borrow less, right?
Not necessarily. Jim keep trying to push for
I know you-
turf versus grass.
I prefer grass personally, but the turf is more utility.
Now, when we built the elementary school, the project came in less than we had had authorized by,
Yeah.
So I think people get
Wasn't fair amount.
uncomfortable with a $6.7 million, lots of ledge, 3 fields, it's a lot of money, you know, that's the argument. A lot of money for a small number of fields. I think they can get more fields, less money if other locations were explored and available to us. But this is suggesting that maybe we don't run the risk of them coming back and saying they need 6.7 because there's some contingency and extras in there to make sure that it is a comfortable budget. And it'd be nice to report out that they got it done for less money and we didn't have to borrow as much. And, you know, that'll set them up well for the next request for additional fields, which will come shortly after that.
And we have the grant, it's $1 million.
Well, we have the
And finding
potential for a
opportunities
grant.
in others.
The guidelines for this grant fit really well into Sturbridge. I'm not aware of how many other towns have a developed
Do you mind
open
if I take
space-
a look at that?
Open space program. But, I mean, as of now, we match all of the guidelines. So some of said guidelines are open space program, recreation commission, conservation commission. I think that might be a really
Ware
great
Mass was one
find.
of the 2018 recipients of the grant. One of them, and Leon lives there, so I was thinking maybe I'd ask him if he knows anything about it.
How much do they have altogether for,
Almost $5 million.
oh,
And the max you can get is 400.
Did you already apply for the grant?
You can't apply for the grant until you attend the grant writing workshop, or they highly recommend you attend the grant writing workshop to
course.
be considered for the grant.
Which is next week, and we would be
Oh,
able to attend. It's Wednesday, the 16th.
And there is an art in applying for the
That's what I
grants
was
and knowing
trying to
exactly
see.
how to answer the questions. And
Right.
yeah, it's probably, it's highly recommended to go to that.
Yeah.
I know someone who does a lot of these and is very successful. I can, you know, introduce you, should you get this approved at town meeting to chase it there. But to make a go, no-go decision on a $6.7 million expenditure, because we may or may not get a grant, is a little short-sighted.
Well, the maximum of 400,000 is, you have to have at least, that's the maximum. So you have to have 35,000 residents to become eligible for the
Or if
maximum.
you're a small town with 100-car parking at the facility, you want to put your
Yeah.
park.
This isn't going to have 100 parking spots.
Actually, 100 it will have. 99 cars, I guess, but we'll change that to be 100.
It's a very, very easy
In terms of
adjustment.
the loan that you have here, the 4.1 at 20 years, is that guaranteed, that interest rate?
I wasn't informed by Barbara that it was not guaranteed, so yes, I would say yes. I worked with her very closely this spring on the project.
Because those usually have a timeline on them.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, this was the most updated number that we have. It's lower than the number we were shown in January.
We do have a very good credit rating with Standard &
That's not
Poor's.
subject to all market fluctuations, like,
I'm sure it is, but, you know.
not as heavily.
I don't think it's as
question
heavy.
How much interest rate's going to change in a few months it'll take should it get approved.
So there's 99 parking spaces right now?
There is, but hopefully. we
But you
can
could
change
probably
that to
squeeze one in?
100.
Yeah,
For $400,000, I think you can find one parking spot.
absolutely, yeah.
Does the town have an open space and recreation plan on file with DCR?
Oh, yeah, they do, and they're updating it. That was the purpose of that
We just
forum
had our big forum
a
several
few,
weeks ago.
about a month, maybe not even, about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Mike went, didn't you? Yeah, so we do definitely have that. That was actually in the current year's budget. I think it was 5,000 or something for that, to,
It's updated every
Update
5
the-
to 7 years.
Yeah,
and
they're
towns
required to
have
update it
file
every
for-
so many years.
cycles.
One more question, I'm sorry. So, assuming this all goes through, you build it, maintenance of these, have you figured out whether your budget is gonna be able to support that? Is that partly where maybe fees will come into play?
That's something where fees would be able to greatly benefit us. Again, I would have to clarify if they'd be able to do that. As of right now, maintenance is kind of from 3 different sections. So the leagues themselves do a phenomenal job of maintaining the fields. They receive very little from the town, specifically the rec department. So on top of their ability to help maintain these fields, the rec department and DPW can help contribute.
So you're not anticipating increasing the line item for maintenance of these fields in a couple of years when they're done?
Our maintenance goes through Betterment. That's something we'd have to explore, and again, I'd have to have the committee, their input on that. There would probably be a minor increase. What we pay right now for the fertilization, it's, I think we're under 2,000 per year, so it wouldn't be a heavy increase.
I think Little League actually puts a fair amount of
That's what
money
she
in.
was saying.
Yeah, Little League, all of the leagues do a great job themselves, but Little League specifically, they are the ones, they paid for lighting, fencing, the new press box, concession stand.
They have a press box?
Yes, they built one themselves.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, they did their dugouts.
Wow.
They really do a great job down there. The leagues themselves only receive $7,500 from the rec department, which this year broke down to $5.09 per player. It's very, very minimal what rec in town does to support any of the leagues.
So the Little League they raised money to do concession and dugouts and whatnot? Is that
Yep, they do individual fundraisers, and then I'm sure that their registration fees help as well.
And you didn't consider talking to them about helping to raise money to do some stuff on these barn fields?
Not when they've already dumped thousands into their current fields, and they'll be a large part of maintaining these fields. They don't have $1 million, to say the least.
Well, any little bit helps, and I still think that you're missing out by not asking.
They have 6,000 to
For
work with
some
right
money.
now. They're largely based off of donations.
I'm not picking on the Little League. I'm suggesting beyond that. Again, I just think it's an awful lot of money. You know, it's $100 a year is a lot of money to some people in this town. And one thing, I mean, in a discussion I had, I made a choice to live here in Sturbridge. So my exorbitant property taxes, I agreed to that when I came into this town. I don't like it, but I like the town. It's my decision to live here and put up with that kind of high property tax. But not a lot of people get that option. And there's an awful lot of people who were born and brought up in Sturbridge that can't stay here and continue to live here and afford to live here. So I have a hard time with the debt exclusion. It's a lot of money. And I think, no doubt, that it's a great project and that it would benefit the kids in this community. Okay, so my decision not to go forward with agreeing on this, you know, I'm not an ogre. I have children. I do enjoy things outside as well. But with all the projects coming up in this town and the tight budget that we're going to be faced with in the coming years, it's a lot of money to ask.
Yeah.
Now Mike had said, you know, well, this is the only one in front of us. All these other projects aren't before us. Well, you know, it's not like the first one to get to the finance committee wins. You know, you have to put all these projects into priority, you know. And I don't know how to do that. I'm just throwing it out there. Somebody bigger than me should be looking at that and putting that together.
Well, I don't think we're ever going to come to the point where they're all in front of us at the same time.
Well-
I mean, that just never happens.
No, I know. I was just addressing the comment that you made.
Yeah.
The town
Well,
has
it's a
already
lot of
invested
money.
$110,000 into this project already. It would be,
Well, that's unfortunate.
just abandon it.
That's unfortunate. We're great at studies and all that other stuff. Look, we spent almost $100,000 on the Shepherd parcel.
You hit a
So-
button for her. That's a Joni button.
Sorry.
I've only been on the committee for a month, so I don't
Oh,
know
gee.
much about the Shepherd parcel, but.
That's all right. I'm just saying it's a lot of money, and I would think that there are definitely more avenues to help defray the cost of the $6 million.
In the past 8 years, we've explored all avenues. I fully
But you
agree with
haven't.
you. With the only avenue we haven't explored is what you brought up the other night of a private company. These are town fields. It's part of the town responsibility. A private company is going to come in and have private control. Perhaps they'd like to rent out the fields to our sports that we currently have. I don't know what their return on investment would be or if anyone would be interested, but these plans have been developed since 2010. No money has been given whatsoever to help support these leagues other than $5 per player per year. So my question is, and I understand the other needs for projects that are going to come up, but again, I am unaware of any current plans that are actually in the works. The senior center has been mentioned a lot, yet they don't have a location that they've even begun exploring yet. So I just ask you to reconsider, but I fully agree that the price tag is high and it's a little overwhelming, but it's an investment to the town. It's taking current location that we already have, making it 100 times better. The town's value itself, every single person can benefit from this. So,
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, remember that.
sure, but I
Okay.
mean, when I'm here and I have kids, I like a playground to take them to.
No
I'd like
doubt.
to be able to
No
play
doubt.
in my own town. I grew up playing in Brimfield in Wales.
Nobody's disputing that, but try and let the seniors know that, oh, sorry, you know,
I
we're
spoke
gonna have
with
to
the
put
seniors
all
on
that.
Wednesday, actually, and they were incredibly supportive of the project. Many weren't aware that bocce,
Great.
courts, parking and whatnot. Senior center was discussed very loosely. They all agreed that, once again, there's no plans in place, so it's not something to really compare right now. But Wednesday was actually a great meeting with the senior center.
That's great, I'm glad that they were supportive.
Let me ask you, if this goes through, you could choose to do fundraising to defray the cost. I mean, have you considered that?
Again, we don't support our leagues and field. All of the fundraising that they make is to keep themselves afloat.
No, I mean the rec committee to do the fundraising to defray cost.
No,
Are
we
you
had
allowed
discussion.
to? The committee's not
Yeah, can they do
allowed to.
that?
We talked about this the other night, and you said no.
Not about the committee fundraising directly, no.
Who did you think I meant by fundraising?
I don't really recall talking about fundraising specifically with you. I just-
Sponsoring and fundraising is kind of similar. We had this discussion.
So again, our leagues are entirely dependent on the sponsors that they currently have. The town gives each player $5 per year. It's insane.
Let me just, I think we're getting out of hand. I think this can benefit everybody, not just the Little League. They do a lot, and the leagues themselves, we have exhausted, and I think I understand that. But this could be a movie night for families, or this could be much bigger. Why not do a fundraiser to the average person who may not even have kids to support this, if the rec committee has that authority? If you do, can't hurt.
No, absolutely couldn't hurt. Down the line, but for now, we don't have locations for a fundraiser. I'm also not aware if the committee is able to fundraise or not. I know the library has the Friends of the Library.
Yeah, I think it's usually an arm, and like the senior center has the Friends of the Senior Center, and they're
Yeah, I'm not
nonprofits that do that.
And you could fundraise to support events like Concerts on the Common and things like that.
Well, I
Other
imagine
towns
that
do
you
it.
could-
Other towns don't pay at all for their Concerts on the Common. They're completely sponsored by, for instance, private industry.
Yeah. Vast majority of ours
I
have
imagine
been
if
for
you
the
had a-
past 2 years.
I imagine you could charge an admission to something to defray costs, but I don't know that I would.
All the things on social media, and there isn't an avenue to reach out to people to donate $10. I mean,
Crowdfund it?
you know, yeah, exactly. I mean,
Well,
I don't know, but.
Yeah.
Hey, one point I made at the
built
last meeting
built
was,
fields that way.
you know, we have a budget for this recreation department of $70,000 a year. That's probably the highest it's been in the 20 years I've been on this committee. You know, we spend $300,000 on the recycling center. We spend $300,000 about, or maybe a little bit less, on the senior center. You know, we spend $3 million on police and fire, you know, $15 million on schools. They haven't gotten a lot of the money, the tax revenue that's been raised every year in the last 20 years. I mean, we have done a senior center, you know, in the 90s. We haven't done, Turner Field was built in the 50s. I guess the original Town Barn Field was built in 1995. There hasn't been a field project that's not associated with a school in 20 years, 23 years.
And I appreciate this discussion on alternative funding mechanisms. You know, we could use that for everything. But you know, as I'm listening to that, I'm trying to figure out, how many businesses we have in town that we can go and get millions of dollars from to defray a portion of this. The movie night, the fundraiser for the others, how many $5 family tickets we sell to a movie night to raise money for this thing do we have to hold in order to get $6.7 million to build a field? And if we're having that discussion, when the senior center project comes to us, what are we going to charge admission to the seniors to come play cards and have lunch on Sunday, to use the facility to find alternative funding for that, or for the police and fire safety complex, if we have to do some expansions there. How many times we need to put the police department out here at the light writing tickets to get some fundraising funds to pay that? So I'd like to find some alternative means of getting some revenues, and maybe if we invest the $6.7 million in a field, it creates an opportunity to hold some fundraising events that can then be used to offset some of the budget items in that we would try to fund down the road versus the capital investment for the facility.
Our current line item for those 2 fields that we actually run is 0. So we haven't really invested anything as a town in those 2 items. So if we did open up a new revenue stream, we could start helping ourselves fund this new project by maintaining it.
Hard as this may be to believe, I was actually on the Little League Board of Directors for a year, and they all have sponsored teams. Every team has a sponsor. I don't recall what they paid, and it's probably much more now, but they are all sponsored. And that's how they get a fair amount of their money, and their teams or their shirts or their hats say
They have the sponsors.
Roms or something, whatever. Yeah, they all do. And I don't know that soccer does that or lacrosse, but Little League has always done that.
Yeah,
And that,
always. They're 100% dependent on sponsors and their own fundraising.
yeah. And the businesses, local businesses have always been very generous with that, would have to say.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I had a question, but I forgot it.
Email me anytime.
To be honest, I'm actually torn at the moment, so.
It would be,
anyone
again,
has
I
another
keep
question
beating
while I
that dead
keep
horse
thinking?
about the turf, but that'd be a great idea. And if they're not gonna do turf, it'd be better if they sod the field, because that would bring it into use very quickly.
Yeah, I think that would be the first and foremost and most likely the only thing considered if there was extra money in the project because the ledge came back low.
And the contingency came back low.
Yeah.
If you had that extra $800,000,
That could be done later. It wouldn't really increase the cost. I mean, you prepare the surface the same way, the underside of it, whether it's a grass field or, it would be a little bit more expensive maybe to prepare it for a synthetic field, but
What's your commitment
not prepared this.
as chairman of the rec committee? How long?
I'm the recreation director.
Okay, so how long is that? How long?
I'm selected by, I run through the rec committee.
Very passionate, and I think that I think this is more to offer than just to our kids. And if you go to town meeting, I think you need that piece to sell it to everybody else, because I think our community can really benefit from having an area like this. And if you're selling it as just fields for the kids, you're gonna miss that section of the community that can't see the other things that it might offer.
I agree. That's why I was really happy with our meeting on Wednesday with the senior center. Prior to that, I was a little nervous because I see the demand for the senior center. I see the reasoning behind, and I agree. It was really nice to reiterate what the overall concept of the project is.
I do have a comment. I remembered it, and it's to the members of this committee. If we were to recommend this, or to say we're going to recommend to town meeting, it still takes two-thirds vote at town meeting.
Yes.
Correct.
And then it still has to go to the ballot
Correct.
following that.
Yeah, the
So
ballot is a
the town,
majority.
even if it went to town meeting, the town itself, the voters would have 2 opportunities to shoot this down, and I just think that that's worth
Or
noting.
to support it depending on their point of view.
right.
Well,
It's a high
For
bar.
those who don't want it, they have 2 opportunities to shoot it down.
Right.
This project is in keeping with, it seems, a style Sturbridge has, which is to delay, delay, delay in the face of need. For example, the current Tantascwa building, which is new-ish, certainly, replaced one built during the Korean War. The Burgess building, which is more than newish, replaced one, it had two parts to it. The older part was built early in World War II.
Yeah.
And the public safety building is now limping along, I'd say. It was built in the 1980s, and the police department moved over from what is now the center office building, which had been a school built in the 1850s and left alone except for the introduction of electricity and running water. And the cops would handcuff prisoners to a vertical standing pipe until they could find a cruiser. Well, that was easy, there was one, to drive them to Southbridge where they were locked up and we paid rent on a per-person basis. And it just keeps going. It's a slow-motion town in the face of the need. So the need, I think, now for the fields and all that can come with it, including business activity as parents bring kids in for tournaments and the like, is probably understated. Everybody knows their own direct experience, but when you add it together for 10,164 people, that's a lot of need. So someday, I think, if this does pass, people will look back and they'll say, it may be hard to believe, but those fields were built in 2019. And that then will be a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's in keeping. It's the way we do things. This building, but we're sitting right here. This used to be a stage because this was a theater. This remodeling was the second one since 1910. Things go very slowly. So stylistically, you get a lot of points.
I'd like to move the motion.
I have one piece of information I think you need.
I guess I won't move the motion.
Artificial turf fields will not be eligible for funding through the park grant in fiscal year 19.
What did it say?
Turf fields are not eligible for
Oh,
the
turf
grant.
fields aren't eligible.
But
For the grant.
For the grant.
You could
For the grant.
possibly separate, since it's only a $400,000 grant, you could separate like the playground and the bocce and the basketball as part of the grant project.
And actually, I don't know that CPA funds are eligible for turf either. I think that's in the law.
I think the cost of the turf is so minimal compared to what they can qualify the funds for,
Yeah.
you know.
I think you just have to be careful. I think I've read that you can't use CPA funds for turf either.
I'll clarify that on Wednesday.
About 90% sure of that one. But
We
again,
can
you could probably, I'm sure you could separate
separate
that out.
them, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you can, because I think we've done that with other, not necessarily with rec, but with other projects that we've had.
calling the motion.
So
I
think-
was.
Let's make the motion.
I think we have the motion to, we'll call the vote. We'll just call it, Jim. No, I'm still wavering. All in favor? I think I'm going to go with you. Opposed? That's 7-1 to 0. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
Aren't you
time.
glad you came back?
Yeah, I feel like I can breathe for the first time all week.
Good things come to she who waits.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Or can I take that back with me? Has anyone else experienced in grant writing?
As of Wednesday, I'll be a professional.
Send my way. Thank you.
I believe we have now voted on everything that there is to vote on, but we do have, I think, a couple of essays. Jared has said that he's not able
Did you
to.
guys already vote on the RFT? Did I?
Oh, the
did I miss
RFT.
that?
Oh, my goodness, thank you. No, we did not. Thank you, thank you.
So this would be a vote as amended, and then we copy in that vote.
Now, that's actually the motion that we were given for the,
So that's our motion?
I gave it to, but I did mail that, or
I
I
have
did
it- I
email
have it
that out the other
electronic.
day. I emailed it yesterday to everyone.
All right,
The
so I'll just
motion we
add that
consider
in.
just completely expunges
Yeah.
the previous, okay.
Yeah, we do have a reserve fund transfer, sorry, thanks, Jim.
Yep.
In the amount of $9,115 for library personnel services, account number 16101-51130. You have that right, Joanne?
What is it?
Email.
It's a reserve, I guess I didn't read
It
it.
was late in the day.
They had a bunch of people that went out on disability, and they had to pay other people
Oh.
to come in and fill in to make up, you know.
And how much is it for?
It's $9,115, and that should get them to the rest of the year. The amount,
Personnel costs?
Personnel costs, yeah, salaries for labor costs.
and I have the amount, the balance in the reserve fund is $44,740.
44,740?
You need a motion?
Yes, I
I'll
do.
make a motion to
I'll second.
pay that.
Bless you.
So that's Jim. Any discussion?
That's fine.
We can vote without him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
We have a quorum.
Any, no discussion? All in favor? 7-0. I guess you would just note that he stepped out.
Did he leave? Oh.
And I think he went to talk to them about grant writing, I suspect.
Oh.
Okay, let me just write that down. 10. And now we've voted everything we need to vote.
Wow, so that, do you think that's the last reserve fund transfer before fiscal year end?
Oh, gosh, no.
Oh,
I doubt it. That's when they need it more.
May, June, July, you think so?
Yeah,
That's,
they can come after July. There's 10 days.
I think we can get up to about the 10th of July.
Right.
They have to close them at a certain point. We do have a couple of essays. Mike sent his in
Yep,
I didn't see it.
about 5.
5 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we don't have, they have to be done by pretty soon, right?
yeah.
Here it is, you sent it to us.
Yeah, he did send it to us.
I have hard copies if anybody wants to look at it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I'll take one,
Oh, that
Mike.
would be
Thank
easier
you.
to read.
It's easier to read, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You have enough?
I have like 5, I think I have one more.
Does Larry have, Larry, do you have a hard copy?
I do not.
We'll give him one. I can look on my phone. I can share with,
merci, merci beaucoup.
Oh, is there one more? Or
ahead.
here, we can.
One more?
We'll share, we'll share.
you can look on your phone, too.
He doesn't bite.
Here it is.
Yeah, that's what you think.
Hard, anyway, man.
And did we approve yours, Larry, from the other day?
Pardon me?
Did we approve yours?
There was a general, but nothing official. It was just sort of informally that it didn't look bad.
That was high praise.
I thought I said I liked it very much.
Well, that's true, you did, but then you've got to raise your standards.
I wasn't in love with it, but I had.
Too bad it wasn't Holland and Wales, huh?
Would probably want to run this by Bree, just make sure everything I said was correct. Like about the 60 days, I don't know whether it's
Right.
45 days.
Yeah, she did, they had said that at one point. Might have been-
45?
It might have been 45, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
thought-
sure.
I think I have it in my notes somewhere, just I was kind of doing it on the fly.
But you had that whole historical perspective in there, too. Where did you get that from?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, I don't know, should I cite them? Well, I was kind of curious, because how did it evolve, you know, like, I guess, you know, there was lots of problems with sanitation, and it led to these epidemics. There was a quote, and I saw some quote about New York City, where there were like piles of manure in the street, and there was, you know, and they figured, maybe we need a Board of Health, So they were a little bit behind England, but not far. But I
that's
think,
why-
these epidemics and plagues were devastating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there were certainly historical reasons for it. I think at some point they needed to understand the science. It would have probably happened a lot sooner behind it.
I can get moving on the essay, so hopefully in the next
So, Mike, there's one sentence
day, I
here
guess
as
I'll
I'm
get them
reading
over to
down.
you.
Yep.
It just,
I haven't had a minute to write it, honest to God.
it doesn't,
No, I believe you.
what it means isn't clear to me, so it says, "Our local Board of Health also previously supervised a plumbing inspector for historical reasons."
Well,
There's probably a meaning there that's not,
I meant was like indoor plumbing was kind of in advance, having toilets and sinks and things. That was probably improved health, but I know when Linda told me that they used to supervise the plumbing inspector on the Board of Health.
Yeah, I remember her saying that.
So I could probably, that could be deleted or it's just curious.
well,
Just take out for historical reasons.
Yeah,
because that begs for an explanation.
yeah, true,
Yeah, and I think the point is that,
Yeah.
they've done a lot of
right.
different things.
Now it's people take it for granted that you have indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
I used to, my first house had an outhouse. Back, it was an old farmhouse,
Really?
in Connecticut, yeah.
My mother-in-law's former property on Route 15 still has a
Yeah.
two-seater, a three-seater attached to the
Really?
wood barn there, yeah.
In fact,
Got
mine
an old
was a
Sears
double
Roebuck
seater
catalog out
right
there?
there.
They both next to each other,
That's exactly where they are.
and really what, the family goes in?
Yeah.
Two adults and an infant.
And is there an old Sears Roebuck catalog out there? too?
Probably, yeah.
No, it's in the hall.
I used to love that Sears Roebuck catalog, Christmas time when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, my wife wanted to cut it off the house and bring it to our house and put it somewhere, just as a memento.
Can I just ask a question about the STM? Kathy, I don't have a vote for Article 64. Was that the intent?
I thought we were going to,
I have recommendation will be given at town meeting.
yeah, because we still don't have a figure.
Okay. So we don't have to vote that, we don't have to, like, agree to that, is what I'm saying.
Trying to remember how we've done that before.
Huh, Larry?
Larry, do you remember how that
If
was
you have
done
a
in
vote
years
now?
past? When we
I
say we're going to
recommend-
give the recommendation at town meeting, do we actually vote that we're going to give the recommendation? Or do we?
No,
No, okay.
So I can take it out then,
yes.
the voted.
The voted part, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we definitely will have, well,
Before I close, I want to.
I will call a meeting on the night of June 4th, but if there's no necessity, we will cancel it.
Yeah, and she's only part-time, Annie's only part-time, and got a few more hours on her
You
typical.
realize that all the essays have the headline of issues for your consideration. I'll show you.
Yes, we always have issues for your consideration, is what it's labeled.
See,
Right, oh, yeah.
no, the order they go in is whatever you decide, but, it's like this or like this, but you want to add, if you look at the current book, last year, you see that is in there.
Yeah, but it's not on every one, it's.
No,
It's
it's
on
the,
the top,
it's
yeah.
the overall headline for whatever comes under it.
Right, thank you, because
So if you're going to cross-read with this current book, you'll find that, and you'll probably want to put it in.
Anybody have any
It's a blank
comments
sheet
on the,
that it's
we
coming.
haven't even gotten that.
On the Board of Health
Oh,
one?
you have.
yes, or move on to the recreational stabilization.
Did you already
fund.
proofread?
So I wanted the
Did you
Board of
give the
Health.
finals yay and nay to Kathy?
I understand in the context of what we have for change here.
Because
but
once, I guess, once you get the okay to her.
Overemphasizing
Yeah.
We're
that
gonna meet
position
again probably
versus
Monday.
a lot of the others that,
I thought tomorrow.
other departments that keep asking for help.
She said to everyone.
You know, are we writing an, is someone describing the For example, the fire department and the SAFER grant and the 4 positions that are coming in there that are basically free now because, or close to free, because we're getting a lot of grant money to fund it, but, we'll have a decision point in 3 years when that
Yeah.
runs out, that we're adding 4 full-timers and the full cost of that into the budget. So
That'll probably be discussed in the preamble a little bit, right? Or no? In your preamble about the SAFER grant? Or would you normally discuss?
Yes, I think I already have that jotted down
Yeah,
somewhere,
any-
actually.
So I don't disagree with the discussion that you have in here about the Board of Health, and it's,
Yeah, it really is.
I don't know, if we think it requires further, or just point out that this will involve further discussion.
Yeah.
And it's up to really the Board of Health and others to come forward with what their priorities are, but we seem to be focusing on that one issue versus others, like the safer positions, and I know Tom
Well,
Ford will sit there and say,
I
I've been
believe I
asking
have
for a
put
staff.
that, I haven't finished my overview because I'm still, waiting for some numbers from Barbara Berry, but,
I do, yeah.
I'm not sure that I have it, I don't think I have it with me, but I usually highlight, like if you look at last year's,
Right, in the
that we-
beginning, the changes,
that some of
new
the,
positions, new hires, new
within the,
resources.
there's a paragraph that starts with, I don't change it much, believe me.
Right.
Within the town's operating budget, the finance committee supports, and then, like adjusting the hours, and I'm quite sure I put in the 4 fire people, fire
Yeah.
personnel. Can't call them that, firemen anymore.
Yeah,
Mike, a question, if I could, on the Board of Health. Actually, well, one question.
yeah.
I understand the reasoning of, it's A, B, C, D, therefore E. And I'm wondering if, considering the reader, who does not live with this stuff, if it's E, and here's why, A, B, C, D, so that they understand what's up. The separation Title V and the Board of Health agent responsibilities, rather than leading eventually to it.
I mean, having that in the title?
Yeah, well, that,
Regarding the essay, starting with
Yeah.
what you're asking for.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Right.
assuming that.
Yeah, it's, I guess, I guess my style was more meandering in terms, I led up to the punchlines at the end instead of.
yeah, and I'm not saying it, neither way is right or wrong. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make it suggest suitability for the reader.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's a phrase called burying the lead.
right,
Which
that's
means at
exactly.
the end you
Well,
say booga booga.
I think I was interested in the history of the whole thing, so I probably wrote it for myself,
Yeah.
and maybe not for the
Well,
reader. You're right.
in that case, the recap in the current first paragraph,
Yeah,
which is available in other locations, I'm just wondering how much of that, I mean, the first sentence in the second paragraph is pretty solid. And to say something like, the Finance Committee recommends the separation of duties of the Title V inspector from the Board of Health agent's responsibilities because the duties of the board have widened in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
Now, if they didn't read any more than that, they would have that kernel of the issue.
right. Well, I mean, if you want to wordsmith it like you normally do, that's fine. You know.
That's why I wanted your permission. I
Yeah,
mean, we
sure.
all,
Yeah.
break a sweat on these things, and I
I'm just
just
trying to get the
don't want to
ideas
sally forth,
down, but I don't want to commit the board to making the separation either, because we didn't really discuss it. And I did a deep,
asks for consideration.
yeah, I mean, I did a deep dive in this myself because I was doing the Board of Health. I do think, at the end of the day, it was a good idea, but we didn't really have the opportunity to vote on it. I think the financial impact would have been pretty minimal, because they were going to double the fee income with the new schedule, and we're going to keep, instead of keeping 10%, we're going to keep 20%. So I think instead of like $10,000 going into the general fund using this figures from a couple of years ago, we would have probably gotten, it was like a $5,000 hit, so.
Yeah.
based on the new, assuming that the fees are raised. And I think there's, there's a lot of things that the town, another thing that stuck in my head was, we had a fire recently where a woman died, an elderly woman who, I guess she got her clothing caught in the microwave, caught
There
on
was something
fire.
in the
Really?
microwave.
In Sturbridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
God, no
the Board of
kidding.
Health actually she had been called to, she had a home health worker there,
Well, I think it called the Board of Health. or
and she had
something.
called the Board of Health, and they were gonna go there on Monday to look at the situation in this apartment, and she died on Sunday. So, I mean, I think, but the thing is, we don't have regular inspections of these rental units, apparently. It's something that,
I thought the issue was they're not allowed to do that unless they're invited in by the.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
not like they can
Right.
come knocking on your door and saying from the Board of
Yeah.
Health, they want to inspect your property.
but I don't know whether that would require a bylaw change or what, but, I mean, it may not be a bad idea to have such inspections. It would protect the residents living there. And the town would charge a fee, so it would be covered by that. But those are.
March.
Well, if it's okay with you, let me, as I have in other years, just
Yeah.
take a swing at wordsmithing, and
Sure.
it goes to Kathy and then to everybody, because all our names go on everything.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to be
So we
okay
all,
with it,
yeah, have to
So
sign off.
after you look at it and make it more, readable and understandable, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Take your-
Okay.
But the need was just as great a year ago as it was a month ago.
These duties require a high priority because of the time under the task plan review, parentheses, 60 days, question mark, question mark. And-
Well, I think it may actually be 45.
Okay.
He's gonna he'll check.
I'll have
look at
to
that.
check with Bree. I have it written down somewhere, but I think, I'd want to double check on that. So I'll do that and I'll let you guys know.
I'm not sure you even need to put that in there. I mean, I think you have
Yeah,
to think
you-
about the attention span of the people who are reading this, and I think
Yeah.
short and sweet is,
Right,
interesting is fun, but I think you lose people.
right. Yeah, I've done that before.
Just like the summary boxes.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that there's a clock that starts when the person makes the application for the permit, in terms of doing the perk and doing
Yes.
approving the plan. And all of a sudden, this becomes like one of the most important things that the Board of Health agent has to do.
Yeah, there's definitely a
Yeah,
statutory time.
Yeah, the cliche, they ask you what time it is, and of course, you tell them how to build a watch. So,
the second one was kind of growth out of, unless we have more questions on the Board of Health. I thought about the recreation thing. I mean, if we had a stabilization fund like we do for fire trucks, it would probably reduce the hit that we take when we, want to do a field project. It might make them more appealing, or we could do some of the bonuses. Like, I know when we were at the open hearing, Charlie was saying, well, why don't we have pavement here? We have crushed stone. And if I'm going to spend this amount of money, I want crushed stone. Or some people want, Jim brought up a good point about the synthetic turf. It allows you to double the activities on the field, basically. But they're really struggling to get the cost manageable. So maybe these things get left off. If there's no bathrooms, for example, they're not there yet, but they will, they could be added.
So,
So other amenities that could be, I don't know what Barbara and, this is kind of a little bit out there, because, I don't know what Barbara and Leah would think about it, but if we had been putting money aside, year by year, $200,000, then we'd have $2 million in 10 years, to apply to these projects, and it may make it, that when it comes time for the next one, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it may make it a little bit easier, or they can do enhancements in this location that they're at right now.
So I can see how that write-up aligns with the discussion we've had the
Yeah.
last two nights here and this recreational
Right.
article that's going there. And while I hinted that, this puts a dent in the immediate needs, they do have greater needs and will probably come forward in a few more years for another field.
Right.
I would think that this article is too specific to recreation, and we just keep putting money aside for recreation for some future field project that may or may not be needed. It might need some further discussion, but if there's money there, well, why don't we just spend it for the use? I like the concept here in light of, we're we're trying to borrow $7 million in. But we got a senior center request coming down. We have safety complex issues. We've got large, we have in a more generic sense, larger capital investments we're going to need to make for the town. Fields, senior center, highway barn, safety complex, who knows what the other thing is. And while we're setting money aside in a stabilization fund, I would think that this article, if you made it more generic about these broader,
Yeah.
larger scale capital investments, if we don't already have that being set aside for buildings and facilities versus equipment and pieces of stuff that come out of the capital plan, may be a way to offset some of those. But
Yeah.
I don't know that, these are large multi-million-dollar expenditures that, what are we going to set aside each year? A couple $100,000, maybe $500,000 if we're great. I don't think it's going to make a dent in that overall piece, and all of those are going to end up being subject to some type of debt
Right.
exclusion vote if we want to invest in those. But I would,
Well, it
again,
would-
think if we made this generic towards the larger capital investment needs for those facilities versus a piece of equipment, I'd be all right with that.
But I think if we had done, we think we did the field, I guess, I don't really remember the original town barn project. I guess it was done in 95. And I guess the land was donated, some of it. There was
We
a,
had owned that land for
Pardon?
years. We had owned that.
but I think there was a local businessman who personally donated money for it, according to Annie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not the company. He worked at Spectran. Maybe he owned their stock and did really well. But that was 20 years ago. And if we had set aside $200,000 a year for 20 years, we'd have $4 million. If we did same thing with the senior center, when we did that, Joe Rokas was here when we did that, and he got a grant. I think it was like $1 million project, and he got a grant for $500,000.
And I don't know how much it was, but I do remember
Yeah.
that there was a grant for.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where grants are more, I think, easier to come by. And, but if we had put aside money for the next one, maybe we didn't know we needed a new one 20 years hence, but.
So
Okay.
I'm with you, but again, we
Mike's
go back
point,
to.
I think that's a harder sell, because
Yeah.
the need for an ambulance and the need for a fire truck and the need
Yeah,
for
that's-
things like that are safety issues.
appreciate
And you
it.
put money aside
Yeah.
in a fund like that, that's self-explanatory. You don't have to tell somebody, well, we're gonna need an ambulance in
Right.
3 years, we're gonna do that. But a lot of people look at, something for recreation is, well, it's a nice thing to do.
Right.
But it's an optional thing, and you
It's
do
an
that if
optional
you have leftover money. It's
Right.
not, and that's I'm saying it's a matter of perception. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a matter of fact, I'm saying it's a matter of perception. So, and to Mike's point, okay, so at the end of 5 years, we got $500,000, or 10 years, we got all this money.
Yeah.
Well, what are we gonna spend it on? Let's find something to spend the money on and spend it. So I just think that it's a tough sell. That's my opinion.
I'm perfectly
To the
fine
average
with deleting
taxpayer.
I guess in using your numbers, I set aside this money for 20 years, I got $4 million. I still don't have enough money to pay for the field, it's $7 million. And there's multi-millions for other buildings that, as Joni points out, are pressing needs we have to figure out. So
Yeah.
I don't think we can set enough money for those very large capital expenditures. And I hate to do it for one specific item when we
Those are
have
borrowing
multiple
items,
competing
yeah.
things there.
Yeah. All right, well, I thought it might help with some of the, if we had the money set aside for like the synthetic turf, we could use that, or for concessions or bathrooms and stuff.
And that's part of the reason why I was trying to get it to be part of the deal, because trying to do it 5 or 10 years from now is gonna be pushing a rope.
Right.
Look how long it took at Tantasco. Dan Durgan wanted to do that 10 years ago.
Right.
And one town blocked it.
Right.
And finally, we had some discretionary money, and that's how we paid for
Well,
it. So,
our
and
late
that would
neighbor,
have saved,
Mary, what was her name? Who's the woman that built that school?
oh, sure, the superintendent at
Who
the
was
time.
superintendent?
Oh, Rosemary Joseph.
Rosemary Joseph.
Rosemary
She's
Joseph.
the one that came up with the parliamentary, she really did a lot of work on that. and
Oh, yeah.
Made it happen, I think.
But
I think it's a good idea, Mike, and I view it a little differently, I think, than Mike does. That I see it as a fund that grows, and you might have an opportunity to do one project, and it leverages other money. Like they said, you could end up with grant money on project after project after project, and at that point, it'll really add up.
Yeah.
Not doing these massive projects, but doing the little things around that need to be done.
Well, we do have the capital stabilization fund, which is probably going to be
Right.
for smaller type things.
Well, there's
That's more
already
for, like,
600K in
600 I
there.
think there'll be 600 after this year.
Yeah.
front-end loaders and things and dump trucks, right?
Roofs,
HVAC, okay.
roof replacements,
I like
didn't,
the idea, though, but, I'm sorry, Joni,
No, that's
that it gets in front of, it educates the town meeting this year, and we're not really voting any money yet. So
They're going to vote.
Well, it's up to them
We're
ultimately
kind of
whether they want the
asking
fields.
for the town to tell us what they think about the idea.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't feel, you guys can either broaden it or delete it if you want. I don't feel strongly about it. But I was just thinking about this problem we had with the field and how some people think it's too much money, some people think, well, it doesn't have enough amenities. You know, how do you, they're really reliant on this one fundraising mechanism. I mean, I think Joni's right. Maybe there's other ways it could be, the money could be had privately, but, I mean, I think it's well known that we have this issue for, you know.
Well, if it does happen and it's built,
Yeah.
maybe if people are impressed enough with it, the embellishments will come from other support that
Yeah, I
comes in
mean,
as a result of the fact.
it's probably more likely
that
we
it's
can.
th- It's there.
If you build it and it's, I mean, I think right now, I haven't been down the Tarn Barn
They
for
will
like 10
donate.
years.
I wasn't gonna say.
I always thought it was kind of a place you'd go to like get rid of a body or something because of the piles of dirt and
There might be some in there.
and
Jimmy Hoffa.
it's, I think, you know, with this enhancement, it's gonna look like a really, if it gets through all the way to
Foundations.
the meeting and to the exclusion.
The end zone.
It would be a very nice, attractive place to go. I mean, I know right now the fields are really nice, and the parents have put a lot of work on that, but you know, it's still kind of rough down there.
It is kind of rough down there.
And I think this would be the next piece,
It
and
was a
maybe,
rough piece of property that was used for storage of spent materials from the highway department, because we didn't give them enough money to dispose of it
Right.
off-site. So part of that, we had to clean up some years and years of, you know, find a way to get rid of the load of that safely, but, you know, keep it on town property.
yeah.
And there was also a school supposed to go out there that
That's
it would
true.
have been attached to that did not get developed.
Huh.
But it's a rough piece of property all around. It's
Right.
wetlands, ledge, and, you know, there's a reason why it's not really developed very strongly, given the characteristics of the land.
Yeah. But it's also near the river, which is nice, you
And
know.
it's flat.
It's flat, you know, there aren't that many flat parcels anyways.
Yeah,
I
it is
think-
flat though.
It might be good if they didn't have to, I mean, I don't know when, you know, if this goes all the way through, when they're gonna be able to come back and do the Plimpton part. I mean, that could be another 20 years before people would do that again. But in the meantime, they could do some embellishments of what they have, of their current assets. But
I'll find
again,
it.
I don't know if it's gonna confuse the issue, if it's just not, something we wanna bring up right now and cause more.
Cause more consternation.
Cause more consternation, yeah, like, so maybe we just get rid of it.
Yeah, maybe you get rid of it because it might just
Yeah,
shine too much light on
Might.
the
Maybe,
issue
maybe
right
people
now.
don't want to think about spending yet more
Right.
more
money.
money, yeah.
Right.
Well, but I do think the idea
You
of a
think?
stabilization is.
Do you think?
I think maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. yeah. Okay, so let's take it
Well,
out.
the
All right,
wounds
we'll
are
take
still
the
open.
recreation out, but keep the Board of Health in.
Okay, I'm not very into it,
That Larry will wordsmith it.
Wordsmith it?
Okay.
yeah.
Do we have any other essays? Joni, are you going to try and write one or no?
No, I am gonna try and, yeah, definitely, I want to participate, because I think I think I did last year, but I know one year I was working on the book and it was too late, so I want to make sure I get something. I have some ideas, you know,
Okay.
and I'll send it to you. I'm gonna see you Monday?
I'm probably going to see you a lot this.
I know,
next few days.
after the dog show, I guess.
I'm not doing it Saturday night.
Oh, all right, Monday? I'm off tomorrow until I go to Amherst.
I really have to work tomorrow.
There is that job.
Yeah, about half my time this week has been Finance Committee. So,
It's going to be a nice day.
It's supposed to rain, I heard.
Friday,
so we do
Saturday.
not need a meeting, I don't think, on Tuesday. Is that everyone's consensus? But there is a presentation sponsored by the Planning Board of the Stretch Energy Code, which is at 6:30 here, if anyone is interested.
So we are not meeting Tuesday.
I don't think we need to.
So we voted on all the articles. You have to get this thing into the printer. So other than a meeting prior to town meeting, there's really no need for us to meet on the next couple of weeks.
Right,
I agree.
right.
Next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and probably until town meeting.
I got
Probably until-
graduation next week, and my niece is getting married the week after, so that's fine with me.
No, probably not until town meeting, unless an RFT comes up that is urgent.
And we're 2 weeks away, we can take care of it that night as well.
Yes, exactly.
Now, did you want to send the final ATM and STM to the committee
Yeah,
to
I can do
review
that
the
tomorrow.
summaries and all that? Well, I'll send you this when I get
Okay.
home tonight, right?
I am going to proofread it one more time.
Yeah, just want to make sure all the,
Guessing myself.
all the
but-
0.00s.
Of that, but,
For consistency, and then, we'll format it together, so don't fuss over the format if the format's off.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, yes. And I'll work on the table, or
And-
finish up the table of contents and the, what I write. And Barbara should have all her facts and figures to me tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow? I was going to ask, I thought she was giving them to you
I
today.
think I misunderstood her. It was, she did,
Okay.
I do remember now that she said tomorrow.
Okay.
That's okay.
So you should get all of those tomorrow, and there's like, what about the CPC?
Yes, she has that.
Oh, okay.
She does have that now.
And then,
So I think the only thing that we might possibly have to vote right now before the town meeting is the unpaid bills, if there any appear. I don't think there was anything else. Or unless the field projects gets more in from CPC, that would change it, so we could
Yeah.
just formally revote it.
Did we vote the CPC report article,
Yes.
even without having the report? Okay,
I'm pretty sure everything was voted.
yeah,
No, I had a chart.
okay.
I
All right.
resorted to that.
Okay. Everything's voted, right, Kathy?
Everything is voted, yes.
So if they get the additional $500,000 from
We could vote again
that
before
night,
that
before the
night.
meeting.
Yeah. Because at that point, they would have to put in a substitute motion on it.
But we wouldn't see that. The moderator would present it, wouldn't he?
Well, I would hope they would tell us ahead of time. Because they're meeting with CPC next week, so we should know. And I'm sure that, again, that Leon would, or Brown Council would craft that article, because it's very important that it be correct for the bonding.
We're meeting with CPC next week.
Or not.
Oh, I thought you said that.
No, they are, rec committee is meeting with
Oh,
CPC.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything, I know we have minutes, but we'll have to deal with them later, I think.
So,
Do we have
Jody's
minutes to
question,
talk?
I think I checked off everything, but
You're not being
you voted the
facetious.
stretch code one of the nights I wasn't here, and then there was an Article 33 to repeal Chapter 90.
We voted
You
that.
voted that one as well?
Yep.
Then it looks-
I had a chart. Absolutely. To keep us organized.
But we didn't vote the unpaid bills. You're waiting
No.
until that night. So I guess the question you should be, we should be prepared to discuss, if we get there and they say there are no unpaid bills,
Maybe that's why he doesn't like
That we
it.
would pass over.
pass over it. But if we voted the article as written, it's wide open, you
We
give.
did vote it as written. We voted that, we said we were going to give our recommendation at town meeting.
Right, so, which is either yay or nay, right? So if you vote no action, and then another unpaid bill comes in, they have to have another special town meeting to pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
Or by
Larry's
voting
being
it the way
fresh.
it's written, you give them the ability to pay it when it comes
I
up.
don't think they
even
do it that way, though.
though- But that's the way that one was
Maybe for
intended to be.
No,
Purpose.
no, they did say that, I mean, you're talking now from fiscal year 17. That's almost a full year now that somebody,
And I
And I
agree.
know it's happened,
I
but
think
that's a
there's still
long
a few that run over to after and they catch in the early part of the new year. But I think Barbara's been doing a good job, and there's extra focus on using systems to make sure that people know what they have for outstanding bills and making sure that they get them in before the fiscal year
yeah, they do.
ends
I think they,
to deal with
I
this.
don't know if they put something out to their vendors to get all the bills in from before June 30th.
Do you have a reserve fund transfer for this?
We
evening?
voted it. Oh, you were out.
Oh, I was, okay,
We did do
very
it.
good.
So otherwise, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Wow, we're done.
We're not done.
We're not done.